Set. Good morning. How are we doing? Is this too loud? Because we could adjust it. That's too bright. My name is Erik Bush. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Demand-Driven Technologies. Delighted to have all of you with us today. We also have a remote audience. Some of the attendees are joining us through Zoom, so we appreciate their participation as well. I'm going to spend a few minutes just kind of setting context for the conference. There's several things that I want to try to express about our business, what we're trying to do, and certainly, hopefully, it aligns with what you would ask of us. What are the things that are important to you in terms of how we help you move forward and get to a better place? So we'll talk a little bit, a very simple mission statement. I'll share a few points around that about our philosophy and why it is that way. And hopefully that resonates with what you would want from a vendor that's trying to help you with your supply chain needs. We'll take a look at the opportunities for improvement. And there's many, many, many of these out in the marketplace as we go from client to client to client, many in very different business segments of manufacturing and distribution, and where their needs are, which are kind of unique to their own circumstance and the opportunities that they're trying to pursue. We'll talk about what it takes to create change. My goal in the first part of the presentation is illustrate that there is a fundamental need for some new thinking in supply chain management. That I think a lot of the ideas of the past need to be looked at again with a little bit of cynicism and questioning to see if they're really what we need to help us get to a more agile and resilient supply chain environment. And that'll be kind of the theme that we're going to try to reinforce over the next day and a half as we meet with you. We'll talk about some of the things that it takes to enable that. And I think there's different strategies. It's going to depend on your business model. We've got everything from clients heavily in the consumer goods arena to heavy industrial environments like a Coke, John's Inc. And their needs are quite different. So you can't go at this with a single strategy. You have to be able to be flexible and adaptable to meet the different environments that our clients find themselves in. Now we'll give you a little bit of an overview on the conference. I'm really excited about the agenda that we've got. We have some very impressive case studies we'll be sharing with you. We have attendees, Jung Suk is all the way from Seoul, South Korea. Igor and Andre are from Ukraine. They're going to be speaking. Caterpillar with Rita Osborne is going to present, and Russell McGeorge from Aptiv is going to present the three case studies that we're going to showcase for you on our agenda. So all different kind of environments, and it's all about what we can do to help you get to better results. So I spent 31 years with IBM. I had a wonderful career. I was very fortunate to get to be part of the consulting and systems integration division, what's now called IBM Consulting. During that career, saw a lot of companies implementing ERP systems. This goes back to early 90s through 2010 when I retired, which was kind of the big era of ERP deployment. And had retired in 2010, had seen enough. Thank you very much. Not sure if I was going to do anything else, but you know, if something came along that I might be interested, I'd certainly jump on the opportunity. And the opportunity came several months after I left, where Chad Smith, who had consulted to my team at IBM, had gone off with CMG and developed some software assets, had gotten far enough along to realize that they really generated better results for clients, and had also gotten far enough along to know that they did not want to be in the software business, because it's not an easy thing to do, to be in a consultancy, small consultancy, and try to be a technology company at the same time. So at that point, Chad had an interest in spinning off their software assets. He had a book deal with McGraw-Hill coming, where they would first publish the demand-driven MRP concepts through McGraw-Hill. And so it was kind of an interesting, you know, alignment of opportunity that really came along. During my IBM career, I was VP of Ops at the consulting business in the US and then over in Europe. And we were seeing a common pattern with these ERP deployments where, like it or not, the project went a couple, 3 years longer than expected. Like it or not, at the end of the day, the business users scratched their heads because Inventory turns didn't improve. On-time order fill rates didn't improve. How can this be? So with that as kind of my orientation and the opportunity to form demand-driven technologies came along, I sat down and I developed a very deep and thoughtful competitive strategy, right? Which was this simple. If you give clients tangible and sustainable results, make the needle move, give you benefits, and you take care of your customers, you can have a good business, because there's so much of that that's not out there in the market. So maybe if we try to be the good guys in the white hats, you're in Tulsa now, so you know all this cowboy kind of stuff. Maybe we could make something meaningful out of it. And Chad had been a very close ally with Ellie Goldratt, who had developed all the body of knowledge called theory of constraints. Goldratt and I were collaborating when I was doing this job at IBM. And we were embracing TOC principles to help us move our consulting business forward, because this was late 90s. The world is changing in the technology world, right? Y2K is going to end. We had a lot of people working on Y2K remediation. ERP is taking off because of all those legacy systems that customers were running away from at the time. Everybody had pretty much grown their own system, in the prior couple decades. And they were at a point where they realized, my goodness, the cost of legacy maintenance is getting out of control. We can't keep up with this. The hardware and software from the computing vendors like IBM and all the other players in the market were advancing faster than they could keep up with on their own homegrown systems, right? They had islands of automation where these small digital systems had been spread around and they didn't talk to each other. They had a mess on their hands. And at the same time, all that's going on, what's happening? The internet is becoming a viable business platform, right? E-commerce is exploding. Of course, we have the dot-com bubble and burst and all those kind of things going on. But it was a very, very complicated time. And we found ourselves as a consulting business. This time we had around 27,000 resources worldwide. We were out of line. Every partner in the firm had a great forecast of all the business they were going to sell, right? But at the same time, many of them had people coming back to the bench, the consulting bench, which is their stock buffer, if you will, faster than those who were leaving, right? Because their skills were now less and less in favor. When that happens in a consulting business, guess what they say? You have no more hiring tickets, right? So what that means is that all these hot new areas, Ariba was coming on to the market and people wanted to go help do implementations on Ariba, and all these other technologies were out there. And we were kind of stuck. So we said, well, what if we develop a pull-based system that determines how we're going to allocate resources? And if people are coming back to the bench faster than are leaving, you don't need a bench because you've got built-in excess capacity already. And if we could use that to free up from the partners the various resources, we could take them through retraining programs. And we did this massive e-business mobilization, we called it. Outside of Washington, D.C., we took over the old Xerox campus that they were using back in their heyday for training resources and the like. And we got better results, right? We were able to pivot the organization quickly. People were able to move into hot new topics and growing technologies. And it was really, really informative to me as a business guy about how powerful the right signals can be in how we manage, right? And it was interesting because we were using Goldratt's distribution solution. If you've ever watched the satellite series, you'll know what this is about, where he talks about, what really matters is the lead time to replenish, right? So think about it. We've got Java developers, we've got senior IT architects, we've got all sorts of different skills, right? And I was getting asked by the senior leadership in the consulting business, well, how many Java guys do you think you'll need in 18 months? And I said, why do I care? Because literally I can replenish those overnight. There's so many in the secondary markets, we shouldn't worry about that. On the other hand, the architects, the guys who drag the developers into the market because they can envision a new solution for a client and the like, we didn't have anywhere near enough, right? I called them redwoods because if you didn't have an architect and you ask them, what do we do to get more of you on the team? Well, you need the right soil and climate, 300 years, and you'll have another one of me around, because these people, very proud of what they've done, had learned the hard way by developing and then becoming more and more senior in the organization. So, maybe what we need is a much bigger buffer of architects, because when we don't have those, these developers don't go to market. They don't get on jobs, right? And it was a very informative period for me in terms of understanding how far businesses can get misaligned if the signals aren't correct, right? In this case, it's forecast versus actual pull, actual consumption. And that's really what drove my interest in TOC. I was very fortunate to spend so much time with Goldratt, who was interested, obviously, in getting IBM's attention on his body of knowledge and things like that. But now, fast forward, clients aren't getting results. I watch Goodyear, they're slapping themselves on the back. Oh my God, we're going to finally get new technology. SAP journey takes 3-4 years longer. Nothing really changes, because what they do is all the decision making gets delegated down within the organization, because everybody's got to configure all the different modules. And what do? They reconfigure SAP to do exactly what they've been doing for the last 20 years, right? So here we have this wonderful opportunity to transform a business, and yet it's not going to be realized because of all these other things, right? So the whole philosophy when it came to, did I want to start DD Tech, was, well, we want to make sure you get results, right? That comes with our simulations that we do for every prospect. We want to make sure that we can create value for you. And we've had a great track record of being successful with that. And clients, like Rita's going to talk about, a very, very impressive set of results that they've earned at Caterpillar in their first implementations, and some recognition that they got on that. We'll talk about how it provides resilience, and you'll hear a story from the Ukraine about how they've been able to achieve this in a very, very difficult environment that none of us in this room have experienced, right? And we'll talk about what's gone on in Russell's career, because he's been involved in very early exploration of DDMRP with Unilever, to now working at Aptiv, a major automotive tier 1 supplier, and a lot of the lessons he's learned along that line. All of it, though, is based on this first principle. Does that make sense? Just the right priority that we should all have? Great. Why do we think this? Well, this is a picture of US manufacturers' inventory turns over the last 25 years. What do you notice about that? Well, kind of got a little bit better. Then it got a lot worse when the economic bubble burst at the recession. Then COVID hit. But basically here and here, we're at the same place. How can this be? Think of what the SAP growth chart would be if you looked at their revenue. It would be more like that, right? We've deployed all these systems, but why is it that we're in this environment? Yes, there's been more offshoring. That would contribute to longer lead times, which would tend to work against what you're trying to do. Yes, we have global competition now. The internet became a thing, and now all of a sudden the power shifted dramatically in favor of the customer, right? Because you've got so much more choice available than you had in the early days. And yeah, there's been product proliferation and other things, but you would think that on, in absolute terms, that we should be in a better place than we are right now. And I think of this as my call to action. This was what really got me inspired about, forming DD Tech and what we're trying to accomplish here. The other thing we see is this. And this is kind of part of the challenge of software development. Every customer you meet will have unique priorities that they want you to fix with new features in their software. And that makes a lot of sense. But there's a point where those new features may or may not be actually generating a positive result or improving the user experience. And when you look at some of the software that's out there, to me, it's analogous to the Apollo space capsule, where literally the user, the astronauts, the best of the best of the best, were part of the computer, right? They had to flip those switches, turn the knobs, push the buttons on their way to the moon and back to make it safely back, right? I mean, heavy, heavy, heavy dependence on human intervention required. And that's what the software is like. It's like every next feature we put in the software is one more thing somebody needs to be trained to know how to utilize. Not everything is created equal. If you look at the Pareto curve of functionalities, there's certain things that are absolutely essential. Then you start to get out to the flattened part of that curve, Maybe it's solving somebody's unique requirement, but maybe you ought to be a little more cynical and be checking whether that's actually going to create value. Because the more complex that becomes, the more challenging it becomes. Companies like Aptiv, Caterpillar, Coca-Cola that we're working with, they're trying to roll systems out to a global network of plants. The tenure and the training and the skill development of the individuals that are going to use the system is very much on a slow decline and eroding, because honestly, who wants these jobs? You're either damned if you stock out the plant, or you're damned if you carry too much inventory. You can't trust the system you're using because it's so dependent on you setting all those switches correctly. It's a mess. I mean, we should be able to do something better with that. We'll talk about SpaceX and what they're doing with reinventing rocketry and space travel. It is just a paradigm shift. And how can it be that human beings can engineer all that capability, and yet we can't give you tools to manage your supply chain that are more intuitive, that are easy to manage, and help you get better results, right? That's kind of the real call to action here. They call it VUCA. I don't know if anybody else is using that term: volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. It's everywhere. We saw it obviously with the pandemic. We've seen it with the economic crisis. Igor and Andre will talk about what it's like to do all this during a war. There's a lot of challenges out there. And we still have this notion of getting the forecast right. Even Gartner now is, and their keynote addresses, last two conferences I've been to, says, quit trying to get your forecast better. You're not going to get there. There's a certain law of gravity, or whatever you want to call it, that limits how much real improvement you're going to get, right? And so, if you're going to depend on that, then you've put yourself in peril. And, the MRP logic was it looks so clear. Feed the demand in. Then it will backward schedule what you need to go buy, then make, then distribute to meet the demand. How else would you do it, right? It's been around since the 70s, MRP concepts. Well, it's based, though, on two very, 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 very flawed assumptions. One, that the forecast is accurate, right? The whole reason you're doing that is you can't, when an order comes in, if you haven't started all these activities in advance, you won't be able to meet the order on time, right? So that's why we use a forecast. Simple enough, right? Yet, through our analysis, through all the things we've done with clients, all these simulations we've done, we keep seeing this, what's called a bimodal distribution, where we got too much of the wrong stuff, not enough of the right, which is reflective of that signal distortion that we're dealing with. We have staffing issues, labor issues, whether it's on the shop floor, the loss of skilled machinists or other skilled labor, or people who are, through the pandemic, finding that there's other ways to make a living and opting out. The planning staff, we see over and over again that people are coming into the jobs, staying for a couple of years, and they either wash out or they get promoted. And now you got to try to backfill. And so the ability to get to a place where you can have a solution that's like your iPhone, right? Where you pick it up and you know how to use it, right? If we could get to that level of functionality, then we'd really be a lot more resilient to deal with whatever staffing issues. Maybe people would stick around a little bit longer. These younger folks coming into the industry now grew up on touch screens, laptops, and they look at the old technology and they think, my goodness, how can you work with this stuff, right? Firefighting is kind of the order of the day. If you've gotten to a place where you've got some stability in your operations, good for you, because it's just really, really difficult to get there. And a lot of the demand-driven concepts that we'll be talking about during the conference, one of the biggest, I think, innovations that Goldratt was so good about was this idea of buffering. Whether it's a time buffer, a stock buffer, or a capacity buffer, be able to have tactics that allow you to address the inherent variation that every system has, right? If we can get better control of that variation, then we stand to put ourselves in a more manageable position. And there's some thoughts on that we'll talk about in a minute that will help us get to a better place. Item proliferation is a reality. Everyone in trying to compete in their markets comes up with new SKUs, new offerings. Every one of those, if you drew a Pareto curve, would illustrate that there's some trimming of the tail that's needed, right? Where you've got these extra SKUs that are actually not generating any new revenue, throughput, or profitability for you. Coca-Cola was a great example. Over 18 months, they doubled their SKU count. Not twice as many flavors, but different pack sizes, different packaging options, and all this kind of stuff. And they found that they really needed to bring that more in order. And then obviously workarounds, probably most notable being Excel. Just kind of describe the environment y'all are familiar with. Yeah, okay. So now what everybody talks about is agility and resilience. That's been kind of the key watchwords that have emerged after the pandemic. If we had a more agile supply chain, we'd be in a better place. If we were more resilient, we would be able to overcome obstacles. So we think of clients thinking about wanting to be able to adapt more quickly to whatever changes come their way, right? To be able to respond to the customer needs, to create that kind of closeness of a relationship with your customers, that you do have the flexibility to meet whatever changes that they see, because guess what? Their market's changing too. So all of this kind of gets interconnected. The ability to recover. You know, we had the Long Beach issues a couple of years ago. We've had major supply disruptions that have occurred. You've got to find ways to pivot, to overcome those, and so that you can get your business back on a good footing. And then, you know, give our team the ability to focus on what the right priorities are. Not every problem is created equal, right? And if we can get focused on the real issues that we need to solve, we're going to be in far better shape. Some examples that I saw during the pandemic, different companies would say, hey, we're going to just focus on our top 50 items and make sure we can deliver those, because the other ones are kind of the noise. And other strategies like that. So it's not just about the technology solution you're using, it's about what other tactics can we deploy to help get to a better place. Make sense? All right. So we want to be an agent of change. In the early days, I'll be very honest, I was reluctant to get too vocal about this because we're a little company, right? And who are we to think that we can outthink all those other vendors? But as time's gone by, and as we've seen things kind of progress, and as our company's gotten stronger and gotten more clients and become more complete from a functionality standpoint, I started realizing, well, why not? Somebody's got to start a change. Somebody's got to come at this and try to rethink how things are done. And I am a major SpaceX fan, so I apologize if you don't like Elon Musk and any of that stuff, but I just look at that as a true inspiration. If that can be done, then why can't we be something different in our arena, right? And if you don't try, then you're never going to achieve it, so why not give it a go, right? So it starts with having that commitment to client value. It's got to make sure, we got to make sure whatever innovations we come up in this arena are going to work for you. That is really difficult work. We'll talk about autopilot after lunch, and we'll show you the great progress we've made on that, and we'll also talk very frankly about things that we think we can further do to make it even better. That, to me, is our first attempt to try to land the rocket on the tail, right? Get reusability going. It would be the corollary. We have to challenge the prevailing assumptions. There's flawed assumptions in MRP. Now, does DDMRP work for everything? Absolutely not. And we will never say that. We'll talk about the make to stock and make to order kind of range of businesses that are out there, and the fact that you can't have one universal tool that's going to fix everything. You've got to have different strengths in different areas to be able to meet that. Flawed limitations of statistical methods. You'll see that when we talk about autopilot. In fact, statistics implies normal distributions. Coefficients of variation are not as reliable of an indicator of what true variation and what true red zone or safety stock requirements may be for an item. And we've got great proof about that. We've got what we think is a better way of approaching that. There's flaws in the cost-based mindset that's so prevalent out in industry. I saw this in spades at IBM. Drive improve productivity in every department, in every resource across the organization, and the company will be better off. But it totally ignores the idea that there's a constraint or two or three that are really what's limiting the output of the system. And any effort on non-constraint to improve their performance is at best going to yield a delayed benefit somewhere down the road. So this gets into how do you focus on the right priorities, right? If you're not doing that well, you're just generating a lot of work for yourself that at the end of the day isn't going to really improve the output. And a cynical need for absolute precision. What I mean by that, in the DDMRP world, they say roughly right is better than precisely wrong, right? If I have a safety stock number for an item, and I'm using MRP logic, anytime the demand pattern or the supply pattern changes, everything changes across that planning horizon. What's that lead to? It makes a nervous system. It makes it unruly. It creates more volatility for you than you actually need to have. Think about that. When you're flying a plane across the ocean to go to Europe or to Korea, wherever, pilot's not reacting to every bounce, right? The plane just flies through them and you absorb that. You deal with it. It's okay. The plane is built to handle that level of volatility in the air. And yet this planning obsession, and this is part of our culture, is to get the right answer, like there is only one right answer. And so we have to take a second look at, is that really the right approach? DDMRP, we plan in ranges. And by virtue of that, it starts to bring some quiet to the system, right? And there's other areas like that that we can work around. So we have to carefully consider, when do we absolutely need to be perfect versus when is close enough going to be actually more effective. Because if we can get close enough with a lot less effort, then we should be happy about that because it makes our life a lot easier. Those principles make sense to you, right? The demand-driven concepts, when you really back away from agile and resilient, are foundational to all of that being realized. If I can answer whatever demand comes in the door today, I'm agile, right? And if I can do that by holding the right stock buffers correctly, that I'm close enough that I can meet whatever variation that demand generates, I'm in a perfect place in terms of agility. And if I found ways to absorb variation, deal with exposures to my resilience, then I'm going to be in a better place. So those principles, which are contrary to all the conventional planning, which is get your supply or demand plan, get everybody to agree what the demand is going to be. Then we're going to build a consensus supply plan. And then we're going to go get the leadership team to agree it. And then we're going to hope for the best, right? Sorry. And in reality, that doesn't work very well because by the time we agree that plan, core assumptions in that plan have already proven to be invalid, right? So we have to learn to be more flexible and focus our attention not on that consensus plan, but on how do we build flexibility into our business, okay? So, looked it up. Here's the definitions for agility. Marked by ready ability to move with quick, easy grace. Let that soak in for a minute. It means you can just kind of bob and weave with whatever's coming along, right? You're known for that. Wow, if we could have that as a hallmark of our company, wouldn't that be a great thing to be at? Resilience, able to withstand or recover from difficult conditions. Now, you can't get there by assuming you know exactly what's going to happen because you don't, right? Your forecast is not going to be that accurate. You just don't have that knowledge. And so the key point here, if we want to become agile and resilient, we have to accept the certainty that we have an uncertain future, right? That, yeah, it's going to be within certain boundaries, but if we knew better how to build our business around whatever that variation may be, now we're going to be in a much, much better place, right? So how do you actually do that then? Well, you can't follow one Bible or another. You have to look at the whole picture. At the top, we talk about the spectrum of different material management environments, everything from make to order or engineer to order. You know, Coke is a business that John Zink, heavy combustion systems and all this kind of stuff. They make one of them, right? Contrast that with Coca-Cola or Fresh Bark, where they're making the same stuff over and over and over again. And you've got different paradigms in how you're going to manage. If I'm in the, and along with that goes this kind of spectrum of the agility tactics. How do we actually create that agility we're talking about? If we're heavily make to stock over on the right side here, then the greater we can become successful at aligning the materials to actual market demand, the better off we're going to be, right? If we can improve our OTIF and service levels that way and inventory turns by better and better mechanics around that, without having to depend on a forecast that we know is flawed, wow, we've really put ourselves in a much different spot. On the left side, it's all about how you manage your production resources, how you operate your business from a production scheduling, project planning. You know, the Coke business starts with designing a new system and then figuring out what you need as components to go into that, and then going down and down to actually delivering it and implementing it with a client. That's such a different paradigm, and that really involves project management, revolves around engineering functionalities. All those things happen to be weaved together. But time, capacity, buffers, and other project management techniques can help you improve your promised day performance. And if you become known as the one that can deliver on time, on budget, then obviously you're going to be very, very competitive in that kind of a market. So we don't want to confuse the fact that you've got to be able to cover this whole spectrum, because every company's got a unique circumstance. And we've got to be able to tailor our solution to help you in those different environments, right? Okay, so how are we doing on time, Kevin? Got about 7 minutes. All right, we're happy. We started out as a DDMRP specialist for the most part. You know, the DDMRP methodology was being published. We were the first software certified against that. We are the global leader in terms of number of clients and the range of deployments that we've done. Yay. But we also know that that's not the whole story. You know, just go back to that last chart. There's things that the DDMRP doesn't work for. We got there by doing these simulations and being able to help the client understand how the solution would work, showing them a business case, learning about their business in the process of that dialogue, which helped us be better advisors and support. And actually, we got to be in a much more of a teaming relationship, I think, with our clients that helped us. But now we've added quite a bit, and all of this is in the Intuiflow cloud now. We launched a demand planning module. Yes, we did. A forecasting solution in this demand-driven platform. We still need that. You got to have some headlights as to where the business is likely to go. There's certain seasonalities and other impacts that if you don't have that, you're not going to be well equipped to build that versatility into the business and that agility we want. The forecast is needed, but for a different reason. We're not going to plan week by week by week against the forecast. Maybe in certain materials you might, but it's part of the ecosystem we need. We have a sales and operations planning platform, which is geared to helping you use S&OP as a process. It gives you also the forward visibility, but the real game plan with all of that is to help you build more operational flexibility into your business. And so that's kind of a key capability and a key philosophy that we'll talk about as we go through the next day. Material planning, that was, whoops, sorry. I hit the wrong button. The material planning side, that was what was replenishment. It's evolved quite a bit, and you'll see with Solar's presentation on this topic, quite a range of new enhancements that have been developed. We actually start to feel like we're getting over the knee of the curve where there's not many functionality gaps that we've got left in the material planning arena. Whether it's using buffers or not, there's a lot of great functionality there that I think can help clients. And then scheduling and execution, which we put into the cloud last year, but it went through some birthing issues, teething issues, if you will. It's really become quite solid now, and we're starting to see quite a range of clients implementing it and getting value from it. We have a great Power BI platform that Kelly will show you, and kind of the range of reports and the insights it helps you develop, and then the distribution functionality for hub and spoke kind of environments where we can help with that deployment. And Russell will talk a little bit about this and how it's being used at Aptiv to be used as a concentration point for same materials going to several plants in a small region, and it's saving freight costs and other elements like that. What this has done, though, is it kind of positions us into a new market. Gartner calls it the supply chain planning market. They believe it represents $20 billion a year of annual spend globally, which is an incredible number. And they say it's growing at around 14%. And this has been drawn from one of our investor presentations. The reality is that 3 years ago, the numbers there would have been 15 billion of revenue, annual revenue, growing at 8%. And so what's that reflect? That it seems like the world has woken up, that supply chain planning and that area of their systems landscape is in need of an overhaul, which we find exciting and interesting. Obviously, it kind of ties back and is driven by a lot of those factors that I showed earlier, you know, with no inventory turnover improvements and things like that. Magic Quadrant shows these vendors, a lot of old technology out there. So a lot of still the old thinking, which we think gives us an opportunity to maybe be a little bit different player in that market. But what it reflects is that we as a company have to be, we have to spread our wings a little bit more widely, right? It's not just about DDMRP and stock buffers, it's about scheduling and execution. It's about that whole spectrum from make to order to make to stock. And it's about really bringing this kind of, hopefully, proper mindset around getting results, making it easier for clients that will, you know, give us a right to earn our opportunity to compete in that market. Okay, so a bit about the conference. Hopefully those messages all make sense to you. We want to share case studies. Karen Bursa is here with us. She's an industry analyst and a speaker that's going to share her perspectives as well. We want to create an opportunity for you to collaborate and learn from each other. We also want to be able to use this as an opportunity to share updates on our platform. What's been changing, a lot has happened on the software landscape since we had our conference last year. We really want to gather your feedback. We're going to use an application called WooClap, which is you'll be able to answer questions on your phone. You just get the QR code from the conference. And as we go through the various presentations, we're going to ask for your feedback. I've also asked every one of my staff who are here to meet every one of you and to get to know each other, right? Because you'll have insights and you'll have perspectives on all this stuff. So if you see anybody on our team that they didn't introduce, please tell me. This will help set that kind of mindset. But no, this is a great opportunity for us to learn. The biggest thing that we've learned through all of our AI ML work so far is there's a lot you don't know, right? You come in with an idea, here's how we're going to do autopilot. And Danny and I will share this with you after lunch. Boy, oh boy, did we have a lot to learn, right? And there's still a lot to be learned. So if we turn a deaf ear to you, that's not going to help us achieve this vision that I'm talking about. So we want to make sure that we're getting your input. And then help you all accelerate your supply chain performance. That's the name of the convention or conference this year. Accelerate, you know, give us some kind of impetus, a call to action to try to move things forward.